Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're doing, a deep dive into a really old text, but we're using it to tackle a question that feels incredibly current. It's something that, every kind of group faces. Can you have strong core beliefs, a solid foundation, and still have, catastrophic failure within the organization?
Right. That's a tough question.
Yeah, and we've gathered some sources looking closely at a reflection on the New Testament book, 1 Corinthians. Now, this isn't going to be a sermon, just to be clear.
No, definitely not.
We're here because this letter, written almost 2,000 years ago, it's like a blueprint, really. It shows exactly how organizations, churches in this case, but it applies everywhere, like companies, even governments, how they can just fall apart from the inside.
And our mission today is pretty focused. We want to quickly pull out the universal lessons from this specific historical situation. We're looking at what happens when, the pressures from the outside culture collide with weaknesses, internal problems within an organization.
It's classic. And to kick things off, there's this phrase from the 1960s that really resonates here, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That youth slogan, Jesus is good, the church is not. It's striking because, according to the sources, that exact feeling, that kind of deep disappointment, was incredibly alive and well in the city of Corinth back around 56 AD.
Wow. So not a new problem then?
Not at all. The sources are really clear that the problems in this early church community were huge. And not just internal issues. They were so bad they became public knowledge. Like, even people outside the church knew all about their problems.
That public shame. That's the first big warning sign, isn't it?
Exactly. That's what we really need to unpack first.
Okay, let's do that. So Paul, who basically founded this community, he has to write this really serious letter. Just how bad did things get? You're saying their internal problems were like gossip fodder for the whole city.
It was a full-blown crisis. And not just theoretical problems. It showed up in three really clear ways the organization was failing.
Okay, what were they?
So first, there was serious moral compromise. The sources label this the defiled church. They were basically letting sin and bad behavior just exist right there in the community.
How so? Like, what kind of things?
Well, you had members involved in pretty serious misconduct, and instead of dealing with it, others just looked the other way, tolerated it. And maybe even worse, some people were actually twisting the core message, this idea of grace or forgiveness, and using it as an excuse.
An excuse?
Yeah, like a license to live corruptly. They saw being part of the group as freedom, sure, but they completely missed the responsibility part.
Right. It's like having a mission statement about integrity on the wall, but down the hall, everyone knows rules are being broken and nobody says anything. That's corrosive.
Right.
Okay, what was the second failure?
The second big one was division. The divided church. It was deeply fractured.
That showed how.
Into factions. At least 4 distinct groups popped up, and each one was basically claiming they were better because of which leader they followed, Paul or Peter or this guy Apollos, or even claiming Christ, but in a really divisive party spirit kind of way.
So loyalty cults almost.
You could say that. These groups, or maybe the leaders themselves, were described as vying for supremacy, constantly competing. It became less about the shared mission and way more about, internal politics and who was on top. Turf wars, basically.
Okay, so you've got deep moral issues, check. Severe infighting and power struggles, check. That just sounds like the perfect storm for the third failure, whatever that is.
It absolutely is. And the third failure was the result of the other two, the disgraced church. Because of all this internal chaos, the scandals, members suing each other in public courts, even things like drunkenness at their gatherings, they completely failed to live up to their own mission.
They undermined themselves.
Totally. They weren't glorifying God, as their mission stated, and they were actively blocking their own progress. All the internal fighting and messiness was just so loud, so visible, that nobody on the outside could even hear their actual message anymore. Their reputation was ruined. They became their own biggest obstacle.
This is the part that gets really fascinating for me. Why? Why did a community that started with presumably strong, unifying beliefs just implode so fast? The source material seems to draw a really direct line between the church's mess and the city it was in.
Yeah, the city itself, Corinth, it cast this huge, very tempting shadow. It was notorious, known everywhere for all sorts of vice, serious immorality, what the text calls worldly pleasures.
Okay, so a party city, basically.
And worse.
Right.
But the really chilling part, the thing the pastor highlights, is that the church members didn't just resist this stuff. They joyfully and brazenly let the city's sins walk right in the front door. There were no defenses up. They didn't just tolerate the local culture of vice. They seemed to welcome it.
But wait, wasn't Corinth also known for being, like, sophisticated. It wasn't just about bad behavior, right? It was a hub for thinking, for philosophy.
Absolutely, that's the
Right.
other side of the coin. Corinth was also a standard bearer of philosophy, a major center for human wisdom, intellectual debate, and maybe intellectual snobbery, too.
Oh, okay.
You had teachers promoting these really complex, sometimes mysterious and profound theories, and this created this intense intellectual arrogance among some church members. They started valuing human intellect, clever arguments, philosophical trends more than, the simple spiritual truths or the core doctrines they started with.
That's the killer combo, isn't it? The arrogance wasn't just from moral failure, like thinking they were above the rules. It was also from intellectual pride, thinking they were smarter than the original message.
Exactly.
So if the culture around you, whether it's politics today, or maybe the tech world's mindset, or just the dominant way of thinking, if it's really strong, it's always going to push against an organization's internal structure, its values. Why did the Corinthians seem to just open the gates to it all?
Well, I think it's because they mistook that sophistication for actual strength. They traded the maybe simplicity of their original faith for the complex, trendy philosophies of Corinth.
They thought it made them seem smarter, more relevant.
Precisely. But here's the critical trade-off they made. When you start leaning heavily on human wisdom, on being clever, you inevitably stop relying on the core truth you started with. And that shift, that intellectual pride, seems to have lowered their guard against the city's moral problems too. It all came as a package deal.
Okay, let's pivot to how this ancient problem still plays out. Because the pastor whose reflections we're drawing on, he gives this fantastic modern comparison. It really shows how universal this whole trap is.
He does, yeah. It's based on his own experience back in 1991, serving two very, very different churches in Taiwan. And he compares them side by side to show how things like resources, status, education, they're just terrible measures of real faithfulness or integrity.
Okay, tell us about it.
So first, there was the urban, sort of elite church in Taipei. Highly educated members, lots of professionals, business leaders. They were financially strong, lots of resources, and very confident. By all the usual external signs, numbers, money, social standing, they looked like a huge success.
Right, the typical big city flagship institution. You see those everywhere.
Exactly. Now, contrast that with the second church he served, a rural, more remote church out in Hualien, much smaller. Fewer members, maybe lower general education levels across the board, and definitely poor in terms of resources. By those same external metrics, this church looked like it was struggling.
Okay, so what's the connection back to Corinth? Because Corinth sounds more like the Taipei church, right? Big city, resources, probably some educated people.
That's the vital point he makes, and it's a lesson for any leader in any field. Big numbers, lots of money, fancy degrees, high social status. None of that stuff actually correlates with genuine integrity or, being true to your mission.
So what does correlate?
The pastor's conclusion was that the only real measure of faith, or let's say organizational commitment, is genuine obedience before God. Or, put differently, genuine alignment with the founding principles. You can have all the confidence and cash in the world, but if you're internally corrupt and divided, you're just a well-funded failure, just like Corinth was becoming.
That distinction from which we believe resources versus actual righteousness or integrity, that really sets up the next point, doesn't it? The critical failure point in Corinth. Once Paul, the founder, the main voice, was physically gone, what rushed in to fill the vacuum? What became the new focus?
Yeah, the leadership focus apparently shifted drastically. It became, secularized is the word used. They stopped centering everything they did, their teaching, their priorities, on the foundational truth they started with.
So what did they focus on?
Instead, the focus shifted entirely onto the members' human accomplishments. Who had the fanciest degrees, who wrote the biggest checks, who had the most impressive job or skills. It became about celebrating human success, human status, rather than sticking to the core spiritual mission.
So the mission statement got dusty on the shelf while everyone was busy polishing their LinkedIn profiles, essentially.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. And this shift, this focus on human achievement, it directly paved the way for all those internal problems we talked about earlier, the moral failings, the public drunkenness, the really nasty power struggles and personality cults around leaders.
And the ultimate result?
The devastating consequence, the sources argue, was that even though they still talk the talk, they profess their faith publicly, their actual behavior, their day-to-day priorities as an organization showed they were acting as if their foundational vision, the resurrected Jesus in their case, wasn't actually their functional leader. They paid lip service, but practically ignored the core mission in favor of human metrics.
And this is where that really serious warning about secularization comes into play. this kind of shift, it doesn't happen overnight, does it? It's gradual.
Oh, absolutely not overnight. The sources really stress that corruption and division are sneaky. They creep in slowly. It's like this process of temptation that bit by bit lowers the standard of what's considered acceptable.
Like standards drift in any organization.
Exactly. Think of it like that. Today, maybe you tolerate cutting a small ethical corner. Tomorrow, maybe you put up with a toxic leader because, well, they deliver results. The day after, maybe you start tolerating outright dishonesty. All because that bottom line, that standard of what's okay, has just been slowly, incrementally pushed down.
We definitely see that pattern everywhere. When the pressure's on, maybe you compromise on safety standards or ignore warnings about quality control. Just because the tolerance level has dropped so low, you don't even notice it anymore.
Right. And the sources warn that if an organization just keeps refusing to stick to its foundational principles, the end result is pretty stark. The text from Romans describes this state where they become totally secularized. Their basic ethics, their social views, how they even think about core values like human rights. It all starts drifting further and further away from the original doctrine. They just become completely untethered.
That sounds like a really severe outcome. What's the ultimate consequence of basically abandoning your founding principles like that?
It's summed up in this really stern phrase, God gives them over. Now, this isn't necessarily about active punishment, it's more like permitted consequences. It means sort of, okay, if you insist on going down that secular unmoored path, fine, keep going. But you will eventually face the natural institutional price for making that choice. The guardrails are removed, essentially, and the organization is left to deal with the decay that inevitably comes from worshiping itself, its own success, its own status.
So what's the antidote? What's the way forward according to this ancient lesson?
The path forward, the core lesson from 1 Corinthians here, is about a really strict adherence to foundational truth. Not chasing human approval, not chasing popularity or pleasure, but standing firm on the organizational standard, even when it's uncomfortable. The organization has to stay laser-focused on its core mission, which for them was preaching the cross, and actively fight against that secular creep, that defilement. Otherwise, you end up with, as the saying goes, the blind leading the blind straight towards destruction.
Okay, so let's distill this. What does this deep dive into ancient Corinth really mean for us today, for you listening?
Yeah.
It seems like we've pulled out three key takeaways that apply pretty much anywhere. First, that pressure from the outside, the culture, the dominant ideas, the temptations, it's relentless, it's always there, and you have to actively push back.
Right. Second, those internal metrics we love, size, budget, education levels, status, they're often incredibly misleading, just like comparing those Taipei and Hualien churches showed us. Resources don't guarantee integrity. The real measure is genuine obedience, real alignment with the founding vision.
And third, and maybe this is the sneakiest one, you have to be constantly vigilant against that slow drift into secularization, that gradual lowering of standards that lets corruption and infighting take root. That's the long-term killer for any institution aiming for integrity.
And maybe one final thought to leave you with, something to reflect on. The division back in Corinth, it started because people were rallying around charismatic figures. I follow Paul, I follow Peter, based on human wisdom, maybe eloquence, maybe perceived success.
Right.
So think about today. How often do we risk creating that same kind of split, maybe more subtly, by focusing on things like personal brand on social media or academic prestige or who brings in the most funding? We can accidentally replace foundational truth or the actual mission of our organization with just celebrating human success and popularity.
It's a challenging thought.
It is. So maybe consider, what metrics do you really rely on, perhaps unconsciously, to judge success or faithfulness in your own work, your own field? And are those metrics truly rooted in the core mission, or are they maybe borrowed from the philosophical arrogance of whatever city, whatever culture you happen to live and work in? Something to think about.